interesting folks very soon. But first, I need to let you know about tonight's sponsors. So tonight's sponsors are the Government of Alberta's Department of Trust Us, It'll Be Fine. And the consultancy, Boundary Adjustments Are Us. Because when reality gets in the way, just move the line. We're not going to let that happen, are we? No, we're not going to let that happen, are we? Hell no, hell no. A few housekeeping notes. Washrooms are somewhere out there, in the corridor. We need to keep the doorways clear if possible. Have a note of the emergency exits. No fire alarms are planned, so if you hear something going, it's the real deal. I want to thank my friends and all our friends, Wendy Walker and Carl Kumpfmuller, who you would know from Comfy Shoes, with the No Gondola group. I believe they have a table outside, and they've got stickers, they've got lawn signs, they have a great website, which is www.nogondola.ca. I'll say that once again, www.nogondola.ca. Don't forget the www. If you forget the www, you'll go somewhere else. It's not a good place, I can tell you. So put in that www. And it's a great site. You can go easily write letters. I tried it out today. A cool trick. They give you talking points. You can queue up an email if you want to fill out the survey. You just go there, send that email to yourself, cut and paste. They make it super, super easy to raise your voice on this very important topic, and that's definitely what we need to do. So enough from me, the song Dance Guy. Now let's get on to our speakers for the evening. And just a warning to all speakers, because we run a tight ship here, I'm going to keep you on time, and I'm asking from all of you, permission to just let you know if you're running a little bit long. I'll give you a 2-minute warning, and I'll just do this, and then I'll give you a very subtle gesture if you're at time. The subtle gesture will be... And I ask that you wrap as quickly as possible, and that's so that we can get to questions per speaker, because I'm sure there will be a lot of them in the crowd. And when I give your bios, listen, all these are tremendously accomplished people. I trimmed their bios down to 2 sentences, so you're getting just the juicy bits, and everyone gets 2 sentences. And listen, our first speaker is Lisa Downing from Bow Valley Engage. Clearly known to a couple people here in the crowd. That's great. Lisa has lived in Canmore for 30 years and currently serves as the president of Bow Valley Engage. You're giving me funny eyes like that. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I thought I got bad copy. I got bad facts here. She is the president of Bow Valley Engage. She's been a long-term, and I call her a stalwart advocate for environmental issues in Canmore. So please, Lisa, I think you're going to ground us in the discussion tonight around the issues. So over to Lisa.
Oh, boy, that's tough to follow. Wow, thanks, Ed. And thanks, everybody, for coming. It's so great to see you all. It's really, really good. A question, Sarah, for you, Sarah Renner on our board. Is there any way you could put up the gondola map? Can you put up the fantasy map? No, the reality map, if you can. I don't know if you'll have it, actually. That's okay. This is the fantasy. The realities are on the boards back here. Anyways, first of all, that's the fantasy. That's the fantasy. The reality, if you look on these, at the end of the night, if you look back there, the reality actually has all the data on there about what actually would be happening. So sorry, we don't have a slide of that. My bad. I don't know how to do PowerPoint. Thanks again, you guys, for coming. I just wanted to throw out 2 thanks. One is to our sponsors, which is Switching Gear, Talus Lodge, and Bow Valley Naturalists. And the other thanks I want to throw out is to our really, really great board. And you guys have just been unbelievable in this whole process. So that's Sarah Renner. Sarah Renner, Tracy Henderson, she's the queen of it all tonight. This is happening is because she did it. Leanne and I left on a ski trip, said, can you take care of this, and we'll be back in 5 days. Jerry Auld, who's sitting in the front, he did all the posters. Scott Deal and myself. Did I miss anybody? Sorry. Good, okay. Okay, so what's being proposed, it's as you can see here, it's a 3-kilometer long string of cable that would carry people up the mountain. And estimated number is 2,000 per day to 300,000 per year, which is insane thinking about that on the top of that mountain. There's the 3 stations. At the top, the summit station would have lodge with a dining area. There'd be viewing platforms. They want to do a suspension bridge, a skywalk that I imagine would be similar to, say, the skywalk out on Highway 93, hiking trails with a total footprint of 20 acres. And here's the catch. It's in prime spring-summer sheep habitat, which is critical for lambing. And even though the threatened species certainly deserve protection, bighorn sheep are also a vital part of the ecosystem and shouldn't be overlooked. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if this development was to go ahead, it would have disastrous effects on the bighorn sheep that call this place home. So why is this so hard for all of us here? For me, it was a gut punch, and I actually feel it. This might sound wooey, but I feel it in my heart. It's just like this beautiful, iconic mountain that we have up there would be desecrated with the cable going up it. And to me, that is just wrong, absolutely wrong. We're removing parkland to accommodate a developer's goal to make more money. Let's call it what it is. And it's specifically taken away critical wildlife habitat that's crucial to accommodate animals moving through. So I think that's why it's so hard for us, is because of some of those things I just mentioned. And also, too, just the intense wildlife impact it would have on species that have used this area for generations. And, the developer can candy coat it as much as he wants, think that this is going to educate the people. You can't educate 300,000 people to stay out of wildlife corridors. So in terms of the history of what's happened here, on the protection of this area, in the year 2000, there's a Special Places Initiative, and a committee got together and they identified 7 different areas within the province of Alberta and designated places around the province that were special. And one of them was the Bow Valley. And they did that because they recognized that it was prime critical wildlife habitat and was in need of protection. So in 2002, the Bow Valley Wildland Park was established, specifically to protect against large-scale development and protect crucial and critical wildlife habitat. Fast forward to 2017, the Gondola proposal was rejected by the Alberta government. Guy Turcotte brought it to the government, and they said, no, we're not going to change our park boundaries, and it's in a critical wildlife habitat. Fast forward again to 2022, he took that same proposal to the Alberta government, and they rejected it, again, for the same reasons. And that was under the UCP government. So what has to happen for this to proceed in the valley? The Bow Valley Wildland Park would have to change. Boundaries would have to be moved. 33 acres of critical wildlife habitat would have to come out of that Bow Valley Wildland Park. There would also have to be an amendment to the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, which getting into the weeds here a bit, but I think it does matter. They would have to amend the regional plan that identifies this as critical habitat and prime habitat for wildlife. So they would have to change 2 kind of guiding documents and sacred documents. It was a promise to Albertans when they made those parks and they made that plan. So they'd be breaking their promise to the Albertans. They'd be undermining a long-standing conservation policy. And wildlife corridors and critical habitat would be compromised, potentially creating a cul-de-sac for wildlife movement, and it would set a dangerous precedent moving forward. If they were to change this park boundary, what's next? Who knows what's up their sleeves? So what we need to do as a group, collectively, not only in this room, but our family, our friends, our neighbors, all across Alberta, we need to send letters. And we need to fill out the questionnaire the Alberta government wants us to do. We need to write a letter to the powers that be. And we also, like I just said, tell your friends and neighbors. The word has got to get out. It's got to spread wide. This can't just be a local issue. This is bigger than that. So to get to those items, there's QR codes here on these tables. You can scan those. The other thing you can do, too, is you can go to bowvalleyengage.com. We've got 2 buttons there. One is for the questionnaire, and the other one is to write a letter. Or you can go to www.nogondola.ca. Make sure you got the 3 W's in there. And they've got 10 different letters you can pick from, and there's also a button there for the questionnaire. So I don't know, you might want to take a screenshot of that. That might help. And then how's the time, Ed?
You're good.
Okay, great. A good news story, because I think we could all have that right now. And this is another David and Goliath story, kind of what we're up against here, it seems like, but I have hope here. In 1998, Gareth Thompson was hosting a CPAWS meeting, and he brought up the Spray Valley, that they wanted to do a development in the Spray Valley. And he said, does anybody, and I got pissed off. I'm like, what? That's a development in the Spray Valley. He goes, do you want to do it? And I'm like, I don't know. I just got here. I hardly know you. So in 1998, Tracy and I and a bunch of others in this room, and some that aren't here, Brenda Davison, Wendy Alsop. Brenda's here? Oh, you are here. Hi. Yeah, so we all got together. Yeah, I saw Wendy. We all got together and we collectively built a movement. And we went out, and Wendy and Brenda got their kids to do stuff. We were going to do floats down the July 1st parade. And then we went to every trailhead, winter and summer, with volunteers, and we got signatures, and we got people to write letters. And in June 1st, 2000, the Spray Valley Provincial Park was designated. So it is possible. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, the message of that is collectively, there is strength in numbers, but it's going to take all of us, and we can't just sit idle on this one. So my closing thoughts. This is about more than just a single project. It could set a dangerous precedent moving forward as all Alberta parks and protected lands are to be removed to accommodate a developer's proposal. That was a mouthful. I apologize. This is about protecting wildlife habitat, and it's about honoring past commitments. And my final comment, it says, I said it. Lately, it feels like we've been battling one development after another. But I encourage you not to lose hope or lose your optimism that things can change. Hope encourages us to move forward and to do what's in our power to make things happen. If we lose hope, we lose the strength to keep fighting for what is right. I believe we can win this one, but it will take all of us again to make it happen. So please write your letters. Tell your friends and family across Alberta to send in letters. Emails before May 14th. Together we got this. And I'm just going to add one more thing. I'm not sure if the developer's here in the room right now, but if he is, I say to him, you have the ability and the enviable position right now to make a huge difference in this valley. You have 2 paths to take. You can be one where you can be the hero and protect this land in perpetuity and forget about the gondola and do what's right for the wildlife, or you can go the other path and you can potentially destroy a critical wildlife habitat patch, corridor and habitat patch. So if you're here in this room, I hope you hear this, and I hope you see the strength in this town and how strongly we feel. Thanks. That's it.
Okay, we arranged before that Lisa would get us fired up. We're not going to take questions, but we will leave time for questions of the other speakers. Lisa, I'm glad you'd mentioned Save the Spray, because I remember that, and I was doing conservation work in Banff at the time, and Gareth came along and he said, hey, you've got to really pay attention to this. And I was in the office with Peter Poole. Who knows Peter Poole? Sure, known to all of you. And we're like, we need like a comparator to, talk about the scale of this development. Well, why don't we do CFL football fields? And so Peter got out, he's an engineer, and he got out his graphing paper and his slide ruler and his kind of like accountant's hat and scribbled away in his pencil, and he came back and he said, Ed, it's 20,000 football fields, CFL football fields. And the reason that we won that, we won it for many reasons, and a lot of people in this room remember it. But Janice Tarchuk, who was a local MLA, on the plane ride up to Edmonton every Sunday night would sit next to Ralph Klein, and she would tell him about what was going on, and she'd whisper in his ear. And Gary Mara was the environment minister at the time, and she'd talk to him as well. Now, of course, with the issue that we're dealing with, Sarah Emaligi is probably not going to sit next to Danielle Smith on the plane up to Edmonton on Sunday nights. Probably wouldn't want that. But there are other ways, and we'll talk about it, that we can ensure that the Premier hears about this. And let's be clear. Yes, the developer has incredible authority over this and, yay, nay decision-making ability. So does the Premier, and the Premier needs to hear about it. Okay, let's get to Tony. So, it's a great pleasure to introduce Tony Clevenger, Dr. Tony Clevenger. He's an independent wildlife research scientist whose research focuses on developing science-based solutions to road systems and the conservation of landscapes and animal populations. He sits on the boards of the Bow Valley Naturalists and the Rocky Mountain Heritage Foundation. So give it up for Tony.
All right, thanks. I thought I was third. Anyways. What a great turnout we've got here. This is really an important meeting and an important issue that we need to deal with. I'm speaking on behalf of the Bow Valley Naturalists tonight. I'll be speaking about Canmore, the Bow Valley, the landscape, and our responsibility to protect and ensure that the rich and varied wildlife in the Bow Valley are able to move freely and access critical habitats and persist into the future. It's one on the right, isn't it? Yep. Oh, there we go. Whoop. I think I went through. There we go. All right. The Silvertip Gondola proposal is one of a long line of succession of developments in the Canmore area in the Bow Valley of the last 30 years. Does that work? Whoops. Too much. Delayed. There we go. Oh, okay, why don't you do it manually? Okay, great. These developments incrementally are a cause for a loss of habitat, prime habitat that will not be recovered. Next slide. I think that's the last slide. Anyways, just go ahead and leave it there. The additive impacts of new developments are not only incremental, but have a disproportionate negative effect on the remaining corridors and habitats for wildlife. So here we are again. It was 4 months ago we were here with the Canmore Area Trail Strategy. Another development proposal in the Bow Valley. We have a spa, hotel resort that's proposed in a wildlife corridor, a campground with 74 sites on the edge of one of the more important wildlife habitat patches. We have an ambitious government-promoted trail strategy that will double the amount of recreational trails and users throughout the entire valley. And we're seeing the privatization of the Bow Valley and financialization of our most precious natural resources and natural capital, the land, the wildlife, and a healthy natural environment. Next slide. Yeah, that's it. Okay. We all know this shot. We all know the Bow Valley. It's continentally significant landscape and potential bottlenecks, too, to large landscape conservation and wide-ranging species. Next slide. There's been hundreds of millions of dollars spent in this valley, invested in connectivity restoration measures in Banff and also the province of Alberta. These have been highly successful. They're world-class examples and shared or copied worldwide. But there's still challenges ahead and immediate. We don't want to be the example of how, after all these investments, all this effort to conserve and balance nature conservation with sustainable development, that we lose it all through an economically driven strategy to increase tourism and tourism revenue dollars at the cost of this unique ecosystem that still has grizzly bears and wolves moving through it. The Bow Valley is one of the most intensively studied landscapes in the world. Several decades of science has led the provincial government to protect this area through its South Saskatchewan Regional Plan and its Eastern Slopes Policy. And now the solid scientific base and the conservation policy are being forgotten, they're being ignored, bypassed in favor of development ahead of the natural spaces and species that sustains tourism here. The most recent research using habitat and corridor data in the Canmore region found that 85% of connectivity has been lost, and the future conditions were not promising. Not at all given the Gondola development and the 3 developments that I mentioned up front. The Bow Valley provides some of the clearest empirical examples of impacts that increasingly human footprints leads to 4 things. First, reduced habitat effectiveness, that is, will wildlife use these areas? Second, fragmentation and loss of connectivity. Third, changed behaviors, more nocturnal use, or more nocturnal activity patterns of wildlife. And last, increased mortality and long-term population decline. And this mortality comes from increased human-wildlife conflicts and roadkills. Next slide. Or maybe the next slide. I think I've gone through that. Okay. There's been a massive number of studies worldwide on animal movement and activity patterns in human-disturbed areas, and there's a shift by wildlife activity to nocturnality. This is termed the nocturnal refuge. A recent study found that across the globe and across mammals, from deer to coyotes, from cougars to bears, animals are becoming more nocturnal due to the rapid expansion of human activity and disturbance. This shift to nocturnality can have impacts on species' ability to meet their basic biological needs of finding food, cover, and breeding areas. The corridor science coming out of the Bow Valley in the last 30 years is homegrown. It is Canada's greatest conservation success story. The Cascade Corridor restoration in Banff National Park, and more than 50 wildlife crossing structures on the Trans-Canada Highway from Seabee to Yoho National Park. In an era of protected area increases, a worldwide strategy, 30 by 30, having 30% of the land area in nations protected by 2030. Here, the government of Alberta is diminishing protected areas and relaxing regulations on developments that disturb wildlife they were intended to protect and conserve for future generations. Next slide. Yeah. So we're going to hear a lot today about the gondola proposal, 200,000 to 300,000 people per year, viewing platform, gift shop, trail development, suspension bridge. The ecological impacts are crystal clear. With regards to the east-west wildlife corridor spanning from Banff to Cape Country, this will be impacted and be one more additional impact to corridor habitat on the most productive south side of the valley. These along valley, east-west corridors are equally important as the north-south corridors that have received so much attention with the wildlife crossing structures across the valley and the Trans-Canada Highway. Next slide. The proposed gondola will deliver an estimated 200,000 to 300,000 annual visitors to a day lodge located high in the alpine habitat, an area used by many wildlife, including extensive use by bighorn sheep, a species that is highly sensitive to human disturbance, particularly during the lambing season. There is resounding agreement and concern among sheep biologists, including the Wild Sheep Foundation of Alberta, that the project will negatively affect local bighorn sheep populations, citing the fragility of the alpine environments and the cumulative pressures already facing wildlife in the Bow Valley. Alpine environments such as the slopes of Lady Macdonald are among the most fragile ecosystems in the Rockies, with short growing seasons and limited ability to recover from disturbance. The area is prime bighorn sheep spring-summer habitat and used for lambing. They provide essential habitat, including forage and escape terrain. Overhead structures, such as the gondola carrying people or suspension bridges, can affect how animals view and use the landscape. And functional connectivity depends not on just physical access, but on whether animals are willing to use the space. Noise, visual disturbance, and increased human activity could cause sheep to avoid areas otherwise suitable habitat. Next slide. Another major concern are the cumulative impacts. Accumulating pressures already facing wildlife in the Bow Valley. The gondola is one of 4 major developments that will significantly alter wildlife habitats and corridors, and ultimately animal movement through the Bow Valley. It's important to note that these effects they don't scale linearly with development intensity. So making late-stage development decisions, like today, after 30 years of development and habitat loss in the Bow Valley, these are disproportionately important. Even small increases in footprint can have disproportionately large ecological effects. So we arrive at a tipping point in time. Not unlike carbon emissions impacting our climate in severe ways, there's a point of no return. The damage is not only long-lasting, but is irreparable. Next slide. So in closing, the Bow Valley is truly a unique place. And with these developments, we're at the cusp of losing it all. The conservation policies, the practice, and implementation to preserve wildlife, their corridors, and critical habitats is on the table. This is what's at stake here. Karsten Hoyer referred to this place as the last best chance to preserve an intact ecosystem in North America. And it is a crisis landscape. It's a landscape that is stressed by human development and disturbance. These are truly last chance landscapes because we don't get a second chance to try to fix them or restore the harm that's been done. What we do here, how we manage development, tourism, recreation, will have significant repercussions on the future integrity and health of the Bow Valley to function as habitat and wildlife corridors. This is an important service to the ecosystem, and we need to protect our natural capital. Thank you.
Great. We've got about 5 minutes of time for questions for Tony. So I'm going to look to the audience and just say, put your hand up high. We've got mic runners. And run, Forrest. Okay, and we'll just do it kind of relatively informal.
Hi. I was just hoping you could help me if I was going to write a letter. How would I argue that this gondola is more impactful than the ski hills and the gondolas that are already in our national parks? Like I don't mean it as a. I agree with you, is what I'm trying to say. But how would I frame that? You know what I mean?
Well, I think, first of all, the fact that the others are ski hills are already developed areas. This is pristine habitat in the alpine. This is extremely important habitat for not only bighorn sheep but other wildlife species too. And you're bringing 300,000 people per year up into this area, which is there's going to be a trail system there, which is going to be impacting wildlife by human use and disturbance from people on the trails too. So I think this is one of the biggest impacts, is that just the massive amount of people up in this extremely fragile environment. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Jim Saw.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Tony, I framed my wrist taking all those notes. Thank you very much for good, solid information. The provincial questionnaire poses the idea that would we support this project more if habitat were added someplace else?
Yeah. like in the prairies, right? Yeah. No, that's ridiculous. I mean, this whole thing about, compensation, habitat compensation, that's sort of the last step of the mitigation hierarchy. You compensate and you lose 100 hectares and you conserve it in some other area, but it's a non-starter. No, you can't. You don't take that important habitat out of the provincial park to begin with. I mean, you can't switch it out. So.
No net negative environment.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Great. We got time for one more question. Yep.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I live up at the Three Sisters, and the elk would come around when there's nobody around. They used to be there all the time. Now they just take off because of the construction. What they're doing up there in the Three Sisters is awful. And when they do, if they do what they're supposed to be doing, because I think it's probably going to go through, because it seems bigwigs always get their way. And it's going to ruin Canmore completely. I moved here 16 years ago because I loved Canmore. I moved from Ontario. And they wanted to do all these different projects within 30 years, I think it was. But I think it's going to be all done in 10, 15.
Yeah.
They're going full bore on doing it. But as for the thing on the other side of me, it'll be a terrible thing to have to look at. And the animals, I worry about them all the time.
Yeah. No, the wildlife will.
Any question?
Pardon me?
Is there a question there? Or a comment?
Was it the people that own the property up in Three Sisters? He had signs everywhere. You couldn't go to the pond, or you couldn't do this, or couldn't do that, and that's how it's going to be the other side. How can he get away to get so much land?
Rhetorical question.
I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that.
Yeah, well, I know, but I'd
he's
rather
got
bring it
connections,
out.
and connections means a lot. I mean, obviously. I mean, we here in Alberta, we talked about the special places at the beginning and all the good work that the province has done. And, in a few very short years, it's just been dismantled. Mm-hmm. So it's remarkable to see, the power of politics and what they can do if they set their mind to it, legally, illegally.
Mostly illegally.
We're ahead of time, so we've got time for one more question in the back. And sorry, it's going to have to, maybe you could bring that question forward to another speaker.
Just as a wildlife Albertan wildlife biologist as you are, for as many years as you've been working as a biologist, do you know of any times where community opposition and combined with the research has impacted change? It's just so much happening and so much change and development. I just need a little bit of hope that this is happening before.
Oh, yeah.
Policy or stop development.
No, I think all the good research that's been done here in the Bow Valley and other places as well. There's a lot of examples, particularly here, where the research and the science has been used to inform management practices and management interventions, and that's the most important thing, is to have that information to be able to make good management decisions and even influence policy too. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Tony. We're going to leave it at that. Yeah, and I apologize for not being able to get to all the questions, but as I say, perhaps you could bring them forward to the speakers. And at the end, we should have some time just for open questions as well. And yeah, remember, we're taking questions. We all have comments we'd like to make, but to honor the speakers, let's really keep it focused on questions. Okay, it's my great pleasure to introduce Bill Snow. He's a member of the Stoney Nakoda Nation and its consultation manager. He's also a recipient of the 2017 Ted Smith Conservation Collaboration Award from Yellowstone to Yukon on behalf of Stoney Consultation. So, Bill, over to you.
Amboa Stitch, good day. The Gunjawa Minta Wincha Stubby Shnish. I'm Bill Snow. I'm the acting director of Stoney Consultation over at the Nation at the Reserve. And thank you to Bow Valley Engage for the invite to come today to speak a little bit about some of the work that we have been doing in the area in terms of ecological corridor project study. Which I'll be speaking about tonight, a little bit about tonight. This area overlaps with the proposed Gondola project, and we are in the midst of trying to finalize our ecological corridor study. And so we are in the midst of wrapping up our study, which began about a year ago through funding made available to us by Parks Canada. And this is a study that we wanted to bring some traditional knowledge in terms of understanding the wildlife movements, the wildlife habitat here in the Bow Valley. And so it is from that traditional knowledge perspective that we are writing this report. Once it's completed and published, we will be sharing it out with all of our various partners that have taken part with us, including Tony and Adam and many others, Town of Canmore, Parks Alberta, Parks Canada. Next slide. So we wanted to start with maybe a common story that you all might be familiar with, Nakota, the white grizzly bear. And we had at the time understood that when she had passed away, a lot of our people were saddened about that. And one of the things that my own family members did was they created this small beadwork embroidery piece. And just to maybe, we were talking a little bit about hope a little while ago. How Bear 178's life might have been, should have been, here in the Bow Valley. And so I think that's a really nice way to kind of understand the role that wildlife play in this landscape, the environmental and cultural importance that grizzly bears and other wildlife bring to this place. Of course, wartanga or grizzly bears are a culturally significant species alongside bighorn sheep, elk, and all of the other wildlife that roam and make their way through this valley. So this is the kind of perspective that we're going to be bringing to our work to talk about more of the qualitative aspects of wildlife, what their meaning is to us as the Stoney Nakoda people. So understanding all of the different barriers that are located, good, bad, and the ugly, around wildlife trying to move into this area. So we've taken the Parks Canada definition of ecological corridors, and as I say, we're trying to bring that traditional knowledge aspect. Some of the work that we have done previously is we've completed a cultural study on the bison reintroduction to Banff National Park. That work is available on the Braiding Knowledges Canada website. So we're trying to bring that sort of understanding to this ecological corridor study. In the last federal government, the funding cycle ended in March of 2026, and I believe that there will be additional projects moving ahead for ecological corridor studies here in 2026 and beyond. We're not sure how many of those project or those funding dollars will actually come to Alberta. So our aim was to look at all of these different types of barriers, highways, railways, electrical lines, other disturbances, and see how wildlife can make their way through these areas against the backdrop of traditional stories and other traditional understandings of wildlife. So our project area is right in the heart of the Bow Valley. We're looking at roughly about 14,000 acres, and it is an area that we didn't get a chance to look at the entire area, but we did have a look at some important aspects. Looking at these areas and understanding how wildlife have moved traditionally through these landscapes. We were then able to look at some of the more historical data in terms of some of the work going on at the University of Victoria through their Mountain Legacy project, understanding the vegetative changes that are seen in the historical mountain survey photos against the backdrop of the actual vegetation that's out there today. Within the study, we're going to be looking at 4 different value components broken up into various areas. We had talked with elders from our community. So at Stoney, Nakota, we're comprised of 3 different First Nations, Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney. We sought out information from elders, from knowledge keepers, and community members. Our ceremony was we had our first ceremony up at the Nordic Center in March of 25. And so that's in keeping with our tradition and how we understand landscapes. We've been able to employ trail riders to go to some of the various areas that we were interested in understanding. When our people are out on the landscape, they're not trained in the Western science. They're trained in terms of the traditional stories, the language, the oral history of those areas. So when they see things and interpret wildlife being out on the landscape, when they come back to our meetings and gatherings with elders, then it's a very different type of feedback loop that we get about how the land is being impacted. So we had a chance to travel to many of the different places. We didn't get a chance to go to all the different places that we wanted to. We have other works that we were competing with in 2025. But certainly it's very important to understand the wildlife movements that come through here, through the Bow Valley, and the cultural importance of those species. One of the aspects that we're looking at is how some of the artifacts have been used traditionally. Those artifacts were gathered and then used in creating artifacts used for warfare or for hunting. And so when we see those stories and are able to then recreate some of these tools from places in and around the Bow Valley, that's a really important part of our history and culture for the Stoney Nakoda people. So when taking away these ungulate species or affecting the vegetation that's out there in along these waterways, that affects our culture, that affects our history and our identity. One of these is this antler weapon that was created by one of the elders in our community. I had the great pleasure of interviewing and gathering some of that information that will be compiled into this report. So I think this is one example of certainly of Stoney Nakota's connection to these areas and the importance that the wildlife and the vegetation played historically and right up until today. Another example of that is sometimes you'll see those the spruce trees with a little bit of a knot in them, smaller ones that looks like a little ball. So those are the types of trees or tools that were used again in warfare and in hunting. And so these are not just things that are anomalies that grow on trees in different areas. These were used by the people for functional reasons related to culture, but also for warfare. So being able to gather these types of artifacts, being able to shape them, being able to tell the stories that are held within the beadwork itself, passing that on to generations. That's what's important to the Stoney Nakoda people. So this is what we're trying to capture, this qualitative aspects, not necessarily how many of these type of trees are out there, but the qualitative aspect of this is important to us in this culturally significant way. As mentioned, we had the great chance to work with the Mount Legacy project with the University of Victoria. And through some of the early survey photos, a lot of early survey photos were taken in this immediate area in the 1880s, 1890s. And we were able to compile some of those in working with people at the Mount Legacy project to give us an understanding of how this landscape looked back at that time period, 1880s, 1890s. Next slide. So when we take that into account, when we see some of the changes in the herbaceous shrub that have occurred over time, replaced with human developments, but understanding the pervasiveness of something like the herbaceous shrub is really important, because what this represents, what that landscape looked like 1889 to 1916, that matches up very well with what some of the elders tell us. Yes, this valley looked very, very different 100 years ago. It supported the wildlife that came through here. And today, it's much different. And I think you'll all agree that, the overgrowth of coniferous species in this valley is out of control. But understanding what it was, using some of this technology from University of Victoria, and being able to then correlate that back with some of the understandings that the Stoney Nakota people have had on this area and other areas, I think is going to be a really important tool going forward, especially with things like all the Fire Smart work and Fire Smart planning. We don't have the report done. I don't have all the recommendations and results from it as of yet, but we hope to have that available soon. And as I said, once it's available, we'll post it and have it available for, it'll be online and it'll be widely available. So I just want to thank all of our project partners helping us out to compile and bring together this work. We certainly weren't able to look at all the aspects that we would normally look at in a project of this size, But given that we had around about a year or so a year and about 3 months to pull this together, I think we've accomplished a lot. Ishnish, thank you.
Okay, I got my mic runners on cue. So, Leanne, you've got a question, and then are you flagging a question in the back yourself, sir? Oh, I've got a question. Okay,
Hi.
Leanne, go ahead.
Thanks, Bill. That was a great summary of your work done in the Bow Valley, really important stuff. Someone from the Alberta government told me that you'd been consulted about the Silvertip Gondola. Being the consultation manager, I just thought I'd double check. Have you been consulted yet?
We have been notified, but all of those pieces that fall into consultation, I don't believe have been done. And so notification is one thing, but sitting down and talking with us about all the issues and concerns, I don't believe that's happened yet.
Yeah, because just so you know, they said you were good with it.
Don't believe everything you see on the internet.
It wasn't the internet. This was an Alberta government person told me that.
Yeah, I saw that, and we like I said, we haven't been. I wouldn't agree with that statement.
Is that a direct quote, and they're good with it? Yeah, priceless. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Don Gardner, and I've done a lot of planning around here. And I'll get right to my point. I'm very visual. Most of you are visual, if you're lucky. I'm tired of the clutter that we get.
Hey, Don, can you keep the mic like
Yeah.
your shape?
Oh, I'm very old and shaky. Oh, no, I'll hold it's mine. The clutter from a distance, I know all the wildlife and all those, but the clutter we see on our mountains, encroaching here, if you go to Banff and you look around and there's clutter, and it really bugs me. And I don't want to see this clutter up on, and it's just for your information, it's not Lady Macdonald, it's Princess Margaret where the plan is, if you look at the maps. Okay? Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Don.
Ishnish, thank you.
Yeah, looking around. Yeah, Bill, just one question. I want you to expand, and you talked about this project and the impacts it could have on Stoney culture. And I think culture is really important. I thought maybe you could expand upon that point a bit.
With the artifacts that we found, yeah, I think there's a lot about the landscape that we know that wildlife have an environmental impact on the landscape, but I don't think we totally understand the cultural impact that they have on landscapes. For example, bighorn sheep. We don't understand what that cultural impact will be to the Stoney people. The project goes through. We can't do replace that land somewhere else, as was suggested before. That is a loss of culture and identity. So it impacts Stoney and Dakota Nation, and I would say in different ways. Ishnish, thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to recognize that Bill also mentioned hope. And to a question we had at the back, we need to have hope right now. Hope, former vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin said, how is that hope working for you? So we need hope, but we also need to match strategy with it as well. And it's difficult when we're dealing with a government that, to reference another sort of hard right person in the U.S., is flooding the zone with shit right now. And that means, like, look at it, with proposed changes to riding boundaries, with getting into schools, with regulating libraries, for heaven's sake. It's difficult, and a lot of these things are part of their strategy of keeping us distracted from what really matters. And this project and I think the economic negative precedent that it would set really matters. But enough of my whinging. We've got our last two speakers. It's kind of like a twofer tonight. So And then we're actually finished with speakers, but there are two people, so they're going to take a little extra time. And then we can take questions of them and then just get to an open Q&A and make sure that we get out of here focused on what we need to do. So we've got Emma Hoskins and Adam Linard. So let's introduce Emma first. Emma lives in Canmore and is a conservation campaign specialist with the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society's Southern Alberta chapter. She manages the National and Provincial Parks portfolio and leads CPAW's All Seasons Resorts Act campaign. And I'm looking forward to hearing about that and that terrible acronym ASRA. That is a dangerous act. Adam Linard is the manager of landscape protection at the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative, or Y2Y. He focuses on protected area designations, Indigenous-led conservation, and integrated land use planning with particular interest in the Bow Valley and the eastern slopes of Treaty 7. So have you figured out the order? I think I should know this. Okay, Emma first, and then if it's all right, we won't take questions. We'll go straight to Adam, and then we'll take questions of both of you. Is that all right? Okay, cool.
Thank you for the introduction and the introduction to the acronym ASRA, which I might say very frequently. This is going to be a very crash course of the policy and kind of the why to this is happening, as well as all the other proposals that are going on. I think I might need you to click. Thank you. So just broadly, like, what is the All Seasons Resort Act? Why did this happen? What are its intentions, and why don't we like it? Most broadly, this was created to support Alberta's new tourism goal to double tourism to $25 billion by 2035. So doubling those visitor expenditures. And the most interesting part of it is it's trying to reduce the dependence on national parks. Yet, Kananaskis country saw 5 million visitors in 2025, while Banff saw 4.23 in the 2024-2025 season. And we're continuing to see more and more visitation year after year since the COVID boom, and that's going to be ever increasing. Now, if this intention of expanding tourism was in more rural communities, boom and bust communities, communities that could use more visitors, maybe we could get behind it in a different sense. It also fast tracks and streamlines the approval processes for development, so skirting or making it easier to push forward, as well as consolidating all those decision-making powers into the Ministry of Tourism and Sport. So essentially, that ministry can say thumbs up, thumbs down, and it moves forward, which is very scary. Additionally, there is a lot of kind of like Alberta, BC tension when it comes to mountain biking. There's concerns that since Alberta has no lift-supported mountain biking operations, we're losing tourism dollars because everyone's going to Invermere instead of staying in Alberta. So they're trying to create that, how do we take a ski hill that offers winter recreation, make it a year-round economy, offer mountain biking or something like that. As we get into the proposals, you'll see it's much more than that. And then also allowing Crown land to be leased for 99 years. So when these places are designated as all-season resort areas, that is a 99-year lease. So this is my silly little slide. And I've heard at the Silvertip meeting, like, Silvertip has come up before. We're here again. We've been in this room before having the same discussions, and it feels like whack-a-mole with all these proposals right now. Nikiska, Fortress, and Castle, I'll get into in more detail. Those were the first 3 already designated all-season resort areas, and that was approved when the act came out. No public consultation, no notice, no nothing. That just happened in the middle of the night, and those appeared. And now we're dealing with those. Silvertip's over here trying to become an all-season resort area too. And then we have this like mystery bucket of like what else may happen, what is looming in the side. According to the government, no proposals are out yet, but this could be Grant Cash or David Thompson next, but it could just be some proponent that has some crazy idea, and they're going to submit another Silvertip-esque proposal. We don't know at this point in time. So where we stand right now with our all-season resort areas that are designated, so Nikiska, Fortress, Castle, 1,100 hectares of public land have been redesignated as all-season resort areas. So this means 929 hectares in Evan Thomas, 131 in Spray Valley, and 54 in Castle. Essentially, these ski resorts were already here, and then they're like, oh, we can just kind of like carve this little piece out and add it, and now call it an all-season resort area. And now we can propose whatever we want. And I think the first most interesting example is, if you can go to the next slide, is Fortress. I know this isn't Silvertip, and we'll get to it. But Fortress is kind of the like Disneyfication of Kananaskis country is how I like to interpret it. There are mountain coasters, if anyone's familiar with those. That is not natural recreation. That is like a mountain-assisted roller coaster kind of thing. Skywalks, canyon swings, mini golf, several gondolas proposed in Fortress in addition to Silvertip, because we need more gondolas. But the big complexity here is this proposes an additional 10,000 people per day just in Fortress and Kananaskis country at full build-out. And I think the thing that is kind of tricky with how Fortress has been like marketed as a proposal, like there's a lot of nostalgia around Fortress as a ski resort, but the ski piece of it is not going to come 10 to 20 years down the road just because of the infrastructure build out. They're primarily focusing on summer recreation only. And is that an all-season resort if we're just starting at a new development that offers summer recreation? And there's going to be condos and potentially Airbnbs. Yay. Sorry to be doom gloom. But I think this is not necessarily expanding all-season tourism operations. This is a development that is larger in itself. So sorry to the Fortress people that were excited about winter. But if we move forward to the next one, which is Nakiska. So Fortress is the only one that submitted their full master development plan. This is what we want to do for 99 years. Nakiska's kind of been hanging back a little bit to, I think, watch what happens with Fortress. And I know there's been some rumblings that Fortress was going to be approved at the end of April. If they are following the proper procedure, it should be 150 days, so we should expect to see a decision mid-June. Nakiska most recently had a comment period that closed April 29th on their summer proposed operations, which are mountain biking and mountain coasters again. The thing that is interesting with Nakiska, when they redid the designation, the Nakiska all-season resort area now includes Troll Falls, Stony Trail, Skogan Pass, and more trails within Nakiska. Access currently has not changed. They're saying it's not, but that kind of leaves us to question, like, Troll Falls is a very popular trail. Is Nakiska in charge of that now? How does that change how Parks manages it? There's a lot of questions surrounding this act, because one, it's brand new, and we've never actually seen anything get pushed through before. Silvertip is like our first all-season resort area we're seeing go through right now. And I think the most interesting thing about Nakiska, I've done some digging, in the Evan Thomas Provincial Recreation Area Management Plan, it strictly states that camping and mountain biking will not be allowed activities in Nakiska. Yet they're saying it's already approved. Not to leave you with more questions and answers, but this is kind of what we're dealing with the government across all these proposals right now, aside from just Silvertip. And if you go to the next slide, Castle is like our third already designated area. I think they're just kind of hanging back, waiting to see what happens in the sandbox with everyone else. So as of right now, that's one to not necessarily worry about, so that's a plus. But one thing I want to preface moving forward is those are the three that were decided without us knowing in the dark of night. We couldn't comment on it at all. Now, what about these other areas that are going to be pushed forward? And I think, not to scare everyone, but like these are public lands that are being recarved out for development. And approximately 60% of Alberta is crown land, or that green, that light green. That's about 40 million hectares. Not that all of these locations are ideal to propose for all-season resort areas, but all of this essentially could be if someone wanted to. And if you move to the next slide, like, how do we propose an all-season resort area? Like, what does that mean? This is taken directly from the All-Season Resort Act, Section 6, if you want to get really nerdy on it. But I won't read the whole thing to you. But the third bullet, no area of public land shall be designated as an all-season resort area if the land is a provincial park or provincial recreation area under the Provincial Parks Act. That's what Bow Valley Wildland Provincial Park is. That doesn't make sense. And maybe to the point of hope, maybe there's some hope there, because that's where that aligns. But to the point made earlier, these regional plans are seeing changes. Ghost Kananaskis sub-regional plan is currently being revised. We would need the South Saskatchewan plan to be changed for Silvertip to go through. We're kind of like following the act, but then we're also changing other policies that influence it at the same time, which makes it hard to keep up with everything going on. And just a little plug, Ghost Kananaskis does have a comment period if anyone's feeling fired up to engage in that as well. But Silvertip itself has been talked about a lot, but I really like this visual because in that same mindset of like carving out these parks and protected areas and public lands, this little red section looks quite small. It's about 14 hectares. But to Tony's point earlier, they think that we can just take it and put it somewhere else. That doesn't work. And that's why I always present the total that we've removed, not the net, because to me, the net doesn't count if we put it in another place. And with Silvertip, as we've said, another 200 to 3,000 visitors per year are going to be added there. We're adding more people to Kananaskis with Fortress and Nikiska. We're already dealing with visitor use management issues and overcrowding. So how is this all going to work if we have all these going on together at the same time? And I think some of the recurring themes, if you're going to go to the next slide with all these proposals, as we talked about, wildlife and wildlife corridors is a huge, huge piece of it, but also the cumulative effects analysis for wildlife, but also looking at all these proposals together. If we're adding 10,000 people a day at Fortress, we're expanding recreation at Nikiska, those are only about 20K apart, and more people want to come to Kananaskis from us, from Calgary, from visitors internationally, it's going to make the problems we already have worse. So is that really helping the tourism industry if we're just creating more problems? But also, all of them have removed protected areas from public lands, and all of them are prioritizing private development over public lands and protection of wildlife. And this is a very crash course on policy, but if you are confused, it does not make sense. And I sit with this policy every day. Adam is going to talk a little more, hopefully, on how we can engage and get involved, but hopefully this helps just set some context as to the government's intentions as to why, if Silvertip becomes an all-season resort area, what that looks like and what the next steps are for the development proposals. Yeah, and we'll do questions later, I've been told. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. That was terrifically informative. We're going to, sorry, Alex, what are you trying to say? Oh, yeah, we have a request to open the door. Yeah, that's what it was. I'm like, oh, geez, I thought I did something wrong. Okay, Adam Leonard, Y to Y.
Thanks, everybody. So the first part of this brief presentation is going to be sort of part of our understanding of how this process is meant to work. It's not Y to Y's position. I'm just describing the process. And then the latter part will be more about some of the possibilities and risks associated with it. So there are times when, I'll go back, there are times when public engagement is required under the All-Season Resorts Act. There's times when it's not, and there's times that are very, very fuzzy. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the question of when that public input is required and who's asking what question and at what point in time. So the first mandatory public engagement is when an all-season resort area, so this is the bigger area, not the development footprint of a resort, is under consideration by the province. If designating an all-season resort area involves a change in land use, public engagement is required. In this case, the Ministry of Tourism and Sport has to ask, should this area be zoned for a hypothetical future development? There is no specified timeline on that. That's where we're at with Silvertip. The second mandatory public engagement is when a specific proposal has been submitted by a developer to the All-Season Resorts branch within the Ministry of Tourism and Sport. The ministry then has 150 days to decide whether to approve, reject, or conditionally approve that development plan. Within that 150 days is a mandatory 30-day public engagement period that is led by the proponent. So the proponent has to ask, hey, is this what you want to see in a resort? It's not whether a resort is going to happen, it's what you want in that resort. That's it for mandatory public engagement. And as we're going to see, even that is not necessarily required. So you might have noticed already that the 3 areas locally that the All-Season Resort Act has applied to have been proceeding in completely different ways. So Fortress, according to the All-Season Resorts branch, designating an all-season resort area at Fortress did not require public engagement because it was already zoned as a resort. So it was designated as the all-season resort area in December, which effectively answered the question of whether a resort would be developed there. And then the proponents submitted their proposal specifically, basically at the exact same time. In January, they launched their own proponent-led engagement, which is mandatory. That's when they had the open house here in Canmore and Calgary and Edmonton. They had the public surveys. They had the wrong email address. That question, again, was about the type of development that was going to happen there, not whether one would happen. Nikiska just a couple weeks ago made that announcement that there will be summer use in 2027. For clarity, that's not approved. That's an idea. Like Fortress, the question of whether resort development can happen there was decided without public engagement in December because, again, already zoned for a resort. What is different is that Nikiska has not formally submitted a proposal to the all-season resort branch, so their survey was completely mandatory or completely optional, and its function unclear. Silvertip is so far the only example of a request to the province from a development proponent to redesignate public land as an all-season resort area that is not already zoned in some way for a resort. So this right now until May 14th is a mandatory government-led public engagement process on the question of whether that land should be zoned for resort development, period. Irrespective of the specific gondola proposal. And to complicate that issue further, we of course have seen this proposal over and over already. We all know what it is. It's already been through public engagement processes. It's already been rejected. So the all-season resorts branch does not intend to do any more engagement if and when a formal submission is made to them by the developer. So although right now the question is not about a gondola, this is the only chance you have to provide public input on a gondola. And I want to emphasize, like Emma did, that this type of proponent-requested consideration could happen on any piece of public land anywhere in Alberta at any time. There are no real limitations to this, especially if parks are open to it. The only caveat there is that public engagement is required if there's a change of land use. And at that point, you might have the same question that we still have at Y2Y, which is, if public engagement is required when there's a change of land use, what counts as a change of land use? You would think that redesignating part of a provincial park would qualify, because it has in the case of Fortress, or sorry, in the case of Silvertip. That's why we're here. But it didn't in the case of Nikiska or Fortress, where the area sort of expanded out into existing protected areas. That's a massive question with massive implications. We're spending a lot of time and a lot of resources to try to answer that question, and we don't have an answer yet. So now that that's like totally clear, the next question then are what are the implications of this all-season resorts initiative for conservation across the broader landscape in the Y2Y region? So at Y2Y, we've been clear and we've been trying to be consistent with this since day one, is that we see potential positives and negatives under the All-Season Resorts Act for conservation at the large landscape scale. But whether it's good or bad depends primarily on where these things are meant to go. So on the positive side, commercial resorts can create incentive for new parks and protected areas. They can diversify economies where tourism isn't already the predominant industry. They can reduce some of the incentives for more directly extractive industries like mining. Nature-based tourism can supply some of the industrial benefits that we see from mining and forestry and other extractive industries in a way that actually demands intact nature rather than just extracting it. Relatedly, commercial resorts can support conservation-oriented action in neighboring parks for the simple reason that nature is their selling point. They have no business model without nature. And third, all-season resort areas, so again, not the resort footprint, but what could be the broader resort area designated by the province, actually offers a higher level of protection than a lot of our public lands do right now, because they override other dispositions like mineral rights and commercial forestry. Not all of our public land looks like public land in Canmore. Public land is also where the tar sands are. It's where most of our oil and gas infrastructure is. All-season resort areas also have the potential to be well managed, and possibly better managed than a lot of public land, because they will require visitor use management plans, wildlife coexistence plans, and staff. And a lot of Alberta's public lands lack all of that. But parks do provide all of those things. And so the risks are also clear, and it's the risks that we're actually seeing play out in all of the proposals so far. And that's what happens when resorts target existing protected areas rather than creating incentives for new ones. So the All-Season Resorts Act clarifies that Cabinet can remove lands from protected areas pretty easily. The Act didn't give Cabinet that ability. They've always had it. And we've seen it play out in every example so far. Castle's a weird one because they actually added a little bit of land to it, but they also did that without any consultation. And the fact that existing protected areas have been the target so far is not exactly encouraging for how this thing's going to play out. So in addition to the direct loss of protected lands, resorts can increase visitation and infrastructural pressure on adjacent protected areas, which of course would compromise rather than support their conservation function. And as we know very well here, resort development can also be the opposite of economic diversification when they target places that are already struggling to manage the visitation that we have. You know, ecologically, socially, economically, even just viscerally, the way it feels. Canmore and Kananaskis have millions and millions of visitors each year, and yet this, of course, is where we're planning to put these things. And finally, the All-Season Resorts Initiative is not set up to understand or manage cumulative effects, as Tony talked about. These are one-off decisions that are divorced from landscape-level understandings of how wildlife and other ecological features are meant to navigate one thing after another. So it may be fine to have one resort. It could be in the right place, but a row of them, or one of them on the edge of a rapidly growing community where we know there are all these other development pressures, that can make the place impassable. It can use too much water altogether. But that isn't the existing framework for decision making that we have. And so we've been making recommendations to the All-Season Resorts branch since they were created just over a year ago. These are some of them that I think are particularly applicable here. So first, every all-season resort area designations should be subject to public engagement and full Indigenous consultation, regardless of its existing zoning. Second, all-season resort areas should be identified through land use planning that includes cumulative effects analyses and tools. And the possibly good news, as Emma pointed out again, is that the Ghost Kananaskis sub-regional planning process is open right now and looking for recommendations. All of the things that we've all shared with you today are valid recommendations to that sub-regional plan because it overlaps with this place. And third, we would like to see thresholds for regions that would be considered for an all-season resort at all. And that includes current visitation numbers and the conservation status of lands under consideration or adjacent to them. So again, the most important question for us, for conservation, for large landscape conservation, is where these things are meant to go. They can improve conservation value, where conservation value and conservation standards are really low. It is possible. Or they can dramatically diminish conservation value where conservation standards are high. I think it's pretty clear that I would argue that the Silvertip plan fails on all of these criteria, but also that the most meaningful recommendations that all of us can make are the ones that not only urge the province to reject this very specific proposal, but that set a better standard for how proponents are going to engage with this question and how government is going to evaluate their proposals across the province. Thanks.
Podium mic, if you don't mind. So questions for either one of them. There's a lot of information there. It's useful. And yes, sorry, finally getting to you on the wall there.
I have two questions, if that's okay. So one I was wondering, I looked at the ghost and Anascus, ghost and that area leaves words plan that you can give your feedback for. This is very loud now. I've looked at that and done the feedback forms. A lot of the questions on that are already kind of leading with like, when this happens, what would you prefer happens here? How would you recommend answering those in a way that suggests you don't want it to happen?
You guys are more the ghost.
Are you asking about the ghost Kananaskis or the Silvertip one?
Like in general,
Probably
so I
both.
looked at that, like that proposal,
Yeah.
and there's the open question period for that. So I answered that one, and there was the one with the speed limit and all of that. Government's great at asking questions that benefit it. How would you recommend answering those so they're not supporting the plan?
I mean, anytime they give you an empty box, say whatever the heck you want. The basic media training is answer the question you want them to ask you. And I would say the same thing for any government feedback process. And I would also just write a letter straight to a minister and CC your MLA so that it's not just going to one place. But I would don't answer the questions that they give you if they're not satisfactory to what you want to say about the issue.
I think Bow Valley Gauge has done this for Silvertip. We've done this for Silvertip. A lot of the conservation organizations will put recommendations for what you can add in there or some stats and facts that are in support of what we support. So that's another resource too if you're kind of stumped on like what to say necessarily. And we do call those things out.
Sorry, I'm going to go to someone who hasn't had a chance to ask a question. Yeah. Yes. Can we get the mic up here, please?
Okay, Adam, I'm going to be off topic. I taught Adam. I taught him. Yes, he was, absolutely. I taught here for 40 years, and I'm going to have an ask for you. So all that you've been looking at here is the gondola and wildlife connectivity. And for me, I joined all the environmental groups after I heard Karsten Hoyer when he was walking the Y-to-Y. And I cried. I was sitting in the Banff Center, and he had slides. And I cried through his whole presentation that we would lose grizzly bears, and them being the species that if you have grizzly bears, you have everything else, right? Because they need so much. And so right now I'm the president of the Crow's Nest Conservation Society. I live down in the Crow's Nest Pass. And when you're here, and when I just drove in today, you have 7 mountain ranges. And then you have public land and hills farther than that. In the Crow's Nest Pass, there's the Continental Divide, 20 k's of hills, a very narrow front range that doesn't run the whole 60 or 70 k's. It runs like 30 k's. And then the prairies that are privately owned, it's 20 k's wide. And they're going to put a coal mine in half of that so that the wildlife corridor becomes 10 k's wide, and there's people living in there, and quadding allowed. And on the other side of the Continental Divide, there's the Elk Valley, there's mines all along the Continental Divide. Like, it's wrecked. So, although this is off topic, I'm asking every single one of you that cares about that to go to the back and sign the no coal mines on the eastern slopes. It will destroy, it will devastate that area. And listen to Adam, because he knows what he's talking about. He was always smart.
You're here, and it's nice to see the student teaching the teacher. Okay, let's see.
Thanks, Ed. Jim. So when I filled out the form, at the tail end, there was a little comment that said that the proponent was going to get a copy of everybody's submissions. And I'm just wondering if I could ask either of you here, do you think that that's fair to the folks that are submitting, taking the time to submit their own personal ideas and thoughts, to be providing the proponent with all of our information and all of our concerns so that they can, in my view, rejig their words. They're still going to do the same darn thing, in my view. But do you think that that's a reasonable question that the government has asked us and told us that the proponent is going to get all of our questions? I don't think it is.
Yeah, I mean, this is an Alberta regulator issue of whatever they're regulating. That these are very closely bound. The regulator is very closely bound with the industry that they're regulating. And as I said before, with Silvertip in particular, they don't want to do public engagement again because they feel like they've done a bunch of it. They're trying to do them both at the same time. Fortress, honestly, is kind of doing the same thing, except the other party's responsible. But the government's getting everything that's going to the proponent in that case. They're trying to put them together so they don't have to do as much. And we will see almost certainly revisions to Fortress on the basis of some of that feedback. Silvertip's what it is. Silvertip's been what it is, and it's going to stay what it is. It's a yes or no question. So, I mean, whether I think it's fair or not, I think it's typical.
Okay, so another question, and I've got one back there, and I think we'll take 3 more questions in total, because there's lots. I'm just going to say, you can, corner the speakers, there's surveys. Yeah, okay, speakers okay with
Yeah, that's fine.
Say yes, executive decision, petitions and whatnot, and there's lots. We still have this room for a while, but I want to kind of, in a tiny way, wrap up the formal proceedings. I've got a couple of housekeeping things, a couple of things to say, so we're going to go with 3 more questions. Yep.
Can you guys hear me? Is that loud enough? Yeah, oh great. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of you who put this together. It's been very informative, so thank you very much for that. But I have a question. Yeah? I have a question for the 2 speakers at the top here. When we were working on the G8, one of the ways we got the underpass built at Deadman's Flats was to provide an estimate on the cost of its longevity and what that cost was to society. Have you guys considered the cost of the increase in the transportation corridor that's going to be required in order to run this? So, for example, I suspect that the TCH will probably double in size, as well as we're going to have some additional increased costs around sewage. So if we're looking at right now, is Wade in the room? Oh, great, Wade's here. The cost to do the renovation on the current sewage treatment plant is what? $100 million. And so if we look at what we're planning here in this valley, and I suspect this will potentially double the donations based on the number of users, 300,000 a year, that's another couple $100 million, and I don't know where they're going to put that. Have you guys considered those elements when you're talking to senior people in Edmonton? Because those dollars really hit them. Like if you think about twinning the highway currently from Calgary to Canmore, that's a massive amount of money. And it's a massive amount of land. Anyway, just a thought that you might want to think about what that analysis might be.
Do you want to?
I mean, they don't.
I can't. I mean, the money question in this valley I find often very challenging, and I'm sure some folks would agree on this, in that the province will make the town pay for as much as they can, which is, I mean, that's true everywhere, but they kind of relish it. That making the town, like making this valley pay for infrastructure is kind of sweet. It's part of how that dynamic works between the Bow Valley as this like non-Alberta part of Alberta in relation to the province. I don't think any one development is going to be the thing that makes the province say, hey, now we have to twin the highway. They're going to do that based on a broader calculus that's going to exempt any one developer from any kind of responsibility for it, unfortunately.
I think I can add some context too. We met with the proponent for Fortress, not Silvertip necessarily, asking a lot of these questions surrounding, well, how do you plan to manage more traffic in Kananaskis country, and a lot of these questions that are of concern, and all the responses are, we've done market assessment studies to get these numbers, we're doing a study, we're working on it, but nothing has been public facing for a lot of those questions that we are asking, unfortunately. It's happening, but is it happening? Is kind of what we're met with.
And I do think, yeah, Kananaskis is the bigger problem in respect to that.
A complete answer yet unsatisfying. Not because of
the answer is no answer.
Because of the situation. Hal, there's a question. Oh, Alex, go ahead.
Thank you. This is sort of a follow-up from the previous question. Look at the paper any week, and most of us know many of the issues that are a challenge for this town: housing, parking, infrastructure, overcrowding, decreasing quality of life, etc. We're often considering cumulative effects in environmental questions. Will the cumulative effects on the town and the valley from the socioeconomic perspective be taken into account? Like, all they seem to look at are the dollar signs that they think they'll make, but they don't take into consideration all the other effects. And we've gotten to where we are now because of that lack of thinking. So.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Was there?
Yeah. Are those things being taken into account in the decision making?
Simply no. I think it's kind of like we were talking about with the town piece. Like, it's a little bit of finger pointing. I think, especially with Kananaskis country, we're going to end up in a situation in the foreseeable future, like Banff, where we're going to have to start looking at visitor use management opportunities, like Marine Lake Road. How do we manage all the people coming here? But I think for these proponents, they're like, well, we're just developing in this little area, so like what happens outside those boundaries isn't our fault, even though it is them creating and adding to the problem. But as far as I know, there's no, on the proponent side, they're not working on that. It's just creating more issues for us as locals, unfortunately. I know that's not a great answer, but.
Hopefully quick.
Sorry, can I follow that one for a sec? Sorry. I just wanted, there is in the all-season resort policy, there is a requirement that an all-season resort adhere to municipal plans or be commensurate with the municipal plans and visions for themselves. So within that policy, yes, there is the requirement from the province, not the proponent, but from the province, to make these decisions to make sure that they're in line with municipal planning documents. So in that respect, the municipality should be able to play a role in that. Like public engagement, the question is always to what end, like how, and that's an open question. But it is there. So if you're writing a letter and saying, this is going to affect Canmore, bring up the municipal bylaws, bring up the municipal visioning documents, bring up whatever municipal process you've been involved in that says, you know what, Canmore doesn't want this thing. They don't, and we don't have the planning for it. That's relevant.
Sorry, probably a very quick practical question. I'm aware most people are quite keen to do as much as we can, but being a mom of 20-year-olds who want to do something as quick as possible, what do you think has the most impact? The questionnaire, sending an email?
Go for that.
I think, not to sound rude, but there's not a lot of young people or 20-somethings in this room right now. I mean, but like getting them involved and getting them to educate their friends and younger people and other people in their demographic to spread this knowledge, because this is important and everyone is able to submit comments. So if they can and they want to learn more and they can go tell their friends, that's going to help this effort across the board with Silvertip and future all-season resort area opportunities. Because everyone being here is great, but how do we go and keep spreading that knowledge to everyone is my main reaction to that.
I agree.
Yeah, look around. We're a big hit amongst the youth crowd.
I don't mean that rudely.
So it behooves us, especially those of us who have children, if you can still, have some, you can lord over your children a little bit and coerce them. It would be great to try and get them involved. And it's just wonderful to see the people here who don't have gray hair. This is not intended self-flattery. The people here who don't have gray hair, thank you for coming. Because we definitely need more of this. Okay, I just want to look at the room. And sir, I know you have a suggestion, and I know other people have comments. I do really want to try to get questions out. And I think I'm going to make some people upset, some people happy. Because like I say, I want to cut it off pretty soon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 more quick questions, but I want to combine them. So ask them at the same time. And you've got a question, and then someone had a hand up here. Okay. That's a sleight of hand trick, sir. Well played. Okay, then we'll just 1, 2, 3. We'll link them, and then that will be it. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, and then over to Emma and Adam.
My question slides of hand too. It's would you agree? And as somebody who's never paid to go on that Jasper Sky viewing platform, I think one of the central points here is these all-season resorts actually remove access, which is free. A lot of the kids, grandkids in this room will not be able to go and pay to go up this gondola, and there will be security cameras, there will be the removal of access in what is public land. And so I think really putting that point forward, we hike Lady Mac Grotto often, this is going to be removed from our ability to do that. And I think portraying that, whilst the government presents this as increasing access, is a central feedback point. Would you agree?
Spicy. That's a baiting comment period.
So, we've talked about various ways to engage, especially the government, the surveys and stuff to this. Would you think it would be an effective method to target the developer himself? I talked to people that worked with the Klein, Getty governments, Stelmach, and we talked about sitting on the plane next to Ralph Klein. If we know the developer's personal email, his phone number, people's decisions on that, people who know him, direct protest, contact, influence has a big impact. And people say, oh, these protesters blocked Deerfoot and Yellowhead. It was so inconvenient, I couldn't get home on time. You notice them. So if I don't know what you think of that as a suggestion, but I think if there's a way to get more direct, his board, people there, people who know him, spread the word through that direct hands-on community versus, I'm sure all those Post-it notes that we stuck up at Silvertip are transcribed and the government's carefully looking them over. But they've had 2 strikes on this thing. I think a third, he obviously hasn't gone bankrupt. He doesn't have to do this. So maybe we can find ways to do that. That's my question.
Question. Yeah. Emma, Adam, any comments?
I thought we had one more.
Yeah, one more.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. I'm so
like, yes, but...
All right, further to this question, if we can somehow get the younger generation involved, what would be the number one thing they could do? Make a phone call, write a letter, fill out the survey, hang a banner from the overpass over the highway?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do we start?
Yeah, I mean, to start with, I'm here officially in my job, which means I'm not going to advocate for kids hanging a banner off the highway, but yeah, I mean, I think that the actions that get the attention of their peers are the actions that are going to have the most impact. The basic hierarchy, yeah, phone call is more effective than writing a letter. Writing a letter is more effective than filling out a form. Filling a form is more effective than signing a petition. There's that hierarchy, but it's getting attention to that. Well, to both of your points, I guess.
I'm trying to remember what I agreed or disagreed to. That that we love Lady Mac. I'm also here on work business. I don't know.
Maybe this one. Yeah.
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 Yeah, they can make TikToks about it, maybe.
Yeah.
It's more of the message gets spread. And
Yeah.
spread outside of the Bow Valley. This affects every Albertan because they're threatening to remove our public land, our protected land. So everybody in Alberta should be worried about this Silvertip proposal. So they need to talk it up among their friends. Yeah, get outrage happening on social media. Because us gray-haired folk are very good at that.
And I think one thing too, like storytelling and sharing your connection to a place, whether it's Lady Mac, whether it's a place in Kananaskis country, that goes a long way. Whether it's with the ministry or not, it reaches the public and it resonates with other people and builds connections. So leaning into that also helps, whether it's Lady Mac or it's just outside Fortress or Nakiska. I mean, even Troll Falls is a good example that could change. So leaning into how we recreate in these places and how we cherish them and sharing that across all ages and demographics of users.
Great, let's give them a round of applause. Great. I love it, Snapchat the Premier. Well, it did sound like someone who's never used Snapchat said that. Count myself in that company. So I just want to thank all the speakers tonight. I'm just going to say a couple things, and then we can go about our evening. I just want to say personally sort of why I'm against this development and why I'm volunteering my time today. I think it's a pretty simple equation in that the downsides outweigh the upsides. The upsides for this project are very concentrated, largely privatized, whereas I think we as the public bear so many of the downsides. And when you look at that, it's just a lousy deal for Canmore. It's a lousy deal for Alberta. It's a great deal if you're a private developer wanting to put 200,000 to 300,000 people up on the top of Lady Mac. And just to put that in terms of a quantity, Sulphur Mountain Gondola does 750,000 people per year. So it sounds large, but we're talking about, sort of half or close to half of Sulphur Mountain Gondola. And you've seen the congestion through that. And of course, when you say 200,000, 300,000 to start, Sulphur Mountain Gondola started and, they had modest ambitions and then disclosed that they're getting 750,000 people per year. Sure. So it'll grow. The potential, this isn't just about one gondola. I mean, it's about whether land in Alberta is truly protected. Or it's just protected until someone shows up with a proposal and uses a system of crony capitalism to prove that it's not protected. And on the access question, people say, oh, well, it's great, it's giving people access. This is not access to nature, this is access through nature. And in fact, it's access over top of nature, where there are a lot of other places that are accessible. But I do want to say, in picking up on what Tracy said, frankly, I don't think the path to victory here is a bunch of Canmore residents getting really upset. As much as we might get upset, that matters. But for this to really resonate in the Premier's office, and let's not kid ourselves, it is the Premier ultimately is going to make the decision on this. It has to resonate outside this riding. And I think it has to resonate in swing ridings in Calgary. Ridings that they care about, that they want to win back in the 2027 election, ridings that they want to hold on to. So we need to get upset and do our part and use hope and use strategy. But on the latter, I really think what you need to do is tell a friend. We need to tell our young people, but you need to get it to be an issue in Calgary in those swing ridings. And we were able to do that years ago, decades ago, with the Save the Spray. To our friends working to try to stop irresponsible coal mining. They're winning that through making it a province-wide issue. And I think really the pathway to victory on this issue is the same. So let's get upset, and then let's help our friends in Calgary, especially in those swing ridings, to also get upset. Well, and of course, we've got a province that, has shown it has no problems whatsoever running roughshod over the sentiments of people in this town. And unfortunately, it's only getting worse. But let's be focused, let's be dogged, and let's be diverse, and let's extend ourselves beyond this room into the business community. And one little anecdote, when I filled out that survey, and thanks, I went to www, I put in the www, nogondola.ca, and I went there and was able to link to the questionnaire. And later on they say, well, tell us about yourself. Who are you? So I put business owner, which is true. My wife and I, we co-own the Co-Kitchen. And then tell us what your interests are. And I put golf and spending time at resorts, which is not at all true. But I think we need to show that even people who go to resorts aren't in favor of this gondola. It can't just be the granola munching crowd that we love to spend time with. We need to reach out and bring in the business community. And I know there are a bunch of business owners here, and they're golfers, and you're not bad. It's a great sport. My parents love it. I suck at it. But yeah, we need to really reach out and find those people. I think we've got a steep hill to climb on this one, but we're going to do it the old-fashioned way, and we're going to do it on our own two legs. So let's do it the old-fashioned way. Okay, that's enough of a stump speech from me. I've got some business and some shout-outs, and then you're all free. So first off, nogondola.ca, just give a shout-out to Wendy and Carl again. Big round of applause. So in addition to have that fantastic site that's easy to use, they've got lawn signs. I believe they have stickers, bumper stickers. Check them out, and they've got a booth. Are they still there out in the corridor? Yeah. Okay, go check them out. They're a wonderful resource. And let's not forget Bow Valley Engage, our gracious hosts and organizers for tonight. And I want to really emphasize their website. Don't need www. It's bowvalleyengage.com, bowvalleyengage.com, and if you go to that site, you also have all the resources that you need to raise your voice on this issue. All the resources that you need at bowvalleyengage.com. We also ask if you go there, sign up, become a member, because then you can stay up to date through email updates on where this issue is sitting and what you can do. So bowvalleyengage.com. Tracy and Lisa, did I miss anything on bowvalleyengage.com? Well, I was going to say donations, where I'm sure people can make donations at bowvalleyengage.com. Yeah, and listen, the people who run Bow Valley Engage aren't in it for the money, amazingly. They run on a shoestring budget, and they have hard costs, including like this room rental, this PA system and whatnot. So there's a donation jar. Where's the booth? The booth is right there. There's a donation jar. You can also do e-transfers to cash at tracyhenderson.com. Auto deposit? Yeah. So who would they send e-transfers to? bowvalleyengage@gmail.com. Okay, there's a button on the website that says donate at bowvalleyengage.com, in case you'd forgotten. Okay, I think that's it. I think we're a wrap. Listen, we have the room until... Yep, I'll get to... Yeah, I've got it. Last note here. Tracy, you prepped me well. We have the room until what time? 9. Okay, so you got 10 minutes and you got to skedaddle. But we would love some volunteers to help clean up the chairs. And listen, we can win this one, right? Do you all agree? Yeah! You all agree? Right on. All right, thanks everyone. Let's go win.